Hello, this is Robert Black, the owner of Brule Iron Gym, here for another video. Today's topic is kind of a general topic, and it's the first part of a couple video series. So the topic is how to address physical weaknesses in the main lift, squat, bench, and deadlift. So I wanted to kind of start with a general video about how to address like weaknesses in general, or like what you would look for when you're thinking of like why you might be weak in one of those lifts. So, and then the next part in the videos, like the next couple videos, we'll talk about specifically for squatting, what are some exercise variations you can work on the physical weakness. So again, like I said, I want to kind of break this up into parts, so it wasn't like one hour long video. So I figured it would be better to have a couple short videos that you could kind of put together and watch in a series. So again, the title is Addressing Weaknesses, and there's kind of three main reasons why somebody could be weak in a lift. So we kind of generalize them into three categories. So the first one here in blue can be technical. So a person might be trying for a 1 rep max and they miss the lift. It doesn't necessarily mean they're not physically strong enough to get the lift. It's most likely actually a reason of technique. So in my own personal training, like my lifting, is when I kind of started into powerlifting. I'd already been training for about 10 years doing like kind of bodybuilding style training. And I started my powerlifting career with a total around, would have been around I think like 1380 something, 1385, somewhere around there. And now like 3 years later I'm around a little over 1700. So I have put on some good amount of like weight into my lifts. So for example, like when I first started powerlifting, my squat was around like a 455, 475, somewhere around there. And that was kicking my butt. So now the last time I successfully did a really big 1 rep max, it was 635 pounds, and that was, it's actually been a while, so I haven't tested my max since then. So recently I did like a 600 pounds in just sleeves, so whereas the 635 was done in reps. So I'm sure once I get back to reps it'll be above 635. So the reason why I kind of mention that is in the span of what I've added maybe like 150 pounds or so into my squat, it wasn't really due to physical weaknesses, so that was definitely a component of it. But one of the biggest benefits to get me stronger was actually just learning how to use my current strength level just better. So like for example, when I first started squatting, my stance was a little too narrow, and then I realized as I kind of worked on that and I developed a little bit of a wider stance. I still have a relatively narrow stance, but a little bit of a wider than what I was doing. I had kind of better even use of my legs. It wasn't so hard on my quads and my lower back, so I was able to kind of get a better involvement in my hamstring and my glutes. Then all of a sudden I kind of got like a jump from my squat. So for example, 150 pounds and my squat might not, like in 3 years, might not seem to some people like a lot, but 50 pounds per year is pretty decent for somebody who's already been lifting for 10 years. And even during that time, I actually had to deal with so like a lower back tear in my QL muscle. I tore a groin, tore a hamstring, tore a quad. So that's like intramuscular tears. And even in spite of rehabbing all that, I was actually able to still get that 50 pounds in my squat per year. So so now that I'm kind of on the healthy end and learning this stuff a little bit more, I'm hoping I can get a little bit better jumps and increases. So, but if you look at the technique part of it, what that kind of refers to is in a squat, it might be you might be getting down to the bottom, and then you kind of like bounce up out of the bottom like the stretch reflex, and after a couple inches you kind of get folded forward and you can't lift it. So, and that might actually not be due to a physical weakness. It might be due to the fact that you're too far on your toes. So learning to sit back more on your heels might actually get you through that sticking point, and in your current strength level you might all of a sudden be able to get that rip. So what I've seen when I meet with clients, and you know, I'll often meet with clients and they'll say, hey, I want to work on my squat, or I want to work on my bench, and we'll work together, and within the 1 hour we're able to get to a new PR. And they definitely do not get stronger in 1 hour. So what we were able to do is kind of refine their technique and just use their current strength better. So that's kind of the main thing when you're experiencing like a weakness in a lift, or like when you feel like you're maxed out in your lift. You actually first want to address your technique. So a lot of times people think, okay, well, you know, I have a bench currently like 315. I want to get stronger, so let me just do, you know, 1,000,000 more benches. So you actually first want to look at what's the quality of your benching. So like I was watching two guys lift the other day. They were trading back and forth set to set and doing benching. And one guy, for example, he would lower it down, then about 1 inch before his chest, he just kind of like dropped the weight into his chest, which really flattened out his arch. And then he thought he would be able to kind of like push back up and through the bar, which not going to happen at very heavy weight. So once he lost his positioning in the bottom, he wasn't going to magically be able to gain it in the middle. So and that's kind of an example where he failed that lift, but if he would have kept his tension the whole time and had a better position to push from, he might have been able to get that weight. So that's kind of the idea of looking at technique. So for squat, like common ones I'll see is people on their toes on the way down, and that gets them too far forward, or their stance width. So people either be like very narrow and they're not using their legs very evenly, or they'll be like ridiculously wide and they're overloading their hips and they wonder why they can't get down to parallel. So in bench pressing, like I said, a very common one is bouncing. So a person will lower it down about halfway or 3/4 away, then you just kind of let go and like have the bar bounce off them, and that really ruins their positioning. Another thing is hip timing. So one of the other gentlemen that I was watching the other day benching, as the bar would come down, he would already be picking his butt up off the bench. And then when the bar kind of dropped and touched on him, his body was already so like tensioned through its hips that there was already so much tightness and stuff that he had nothing to kind of push from. You'll hear sometimes people say getting like leg drive in a bench press. What they generally mean is when they bring the bar down, they touch their chest, they're then going to kind of push with their legs, and what that does, it generates like a kind of a wave force through their body, which translates into the bar and hopefully pushes it up and helps push it up. So with his hips already up off the bench and his legs already like flexed in the point where they're pushing that hard, he already had that push. So then when he expected to get something from his legs, there was nothing because they were already maxed out. So in the deadlift, again, people kind of push off the floor on their toes. Another one would be called pulling slack out of the bar. So when they bend down to grab the bar, they'll just kind of fire from the floor, and then all of a sudden you'll see their body kind of jolt real fast. So you'll see like as soon as they go to leave the floor, their body kind of like has this quick jolt to it. Then once it sets, then all of a sudden they'll push more or get speed in their lift. So that jolting, what that is, the reason for that is because they're not tight. So they don't have their upper back tight, they don't have their lats tight, so their positioning is kind of loose. So then when they expect to like power through the bar, their body has to tighten first for that power to transfer, and that's why you'll see that visible kind of jolt in their butt. And they're definitely going to feel it, they're going to feel their shoulders and their back, but you can physically see that too. So that's the main thing you want to look at first, is when you're experiencing kind of a maxed out in a lift, is to really focus on your technique. So one of the things I've done in the past is I'll film myself and I'll actually watch the film and I'll compare it to really good lifters on YouTube, and that might help me see, okay, well my body's doing this, their body isn't doing that, where are their feet, where's my feet, you know, that kind of thing. So you want to compare it to somebody who has better form, so either in person, maybe a training partner or somebody at your gym, or go find somebody on YouTube. So, and you want to compare your video to their video. So that's one good way to kind of work on your technique. So the second thing you then want to kind of look at is physical strength. So you might be failing your bench press simply because you're not strong enough to get the weight you tried. So, and that's when you want to kind of address not necessarily technique at that moment, like you do want to do technique of course, but then once the technique you feel like is refined or you've improved it, you want to also address kind of the physical strength of the lift. So for example, in a squat, most people tend to be kind of stronger in their quads naturally than they are in their hamstrings, so they might want to then start focusing on hamstring strength. So doing some like lying leg curls, stiff leg deadlifts, glute ham raises, that kind of stuff after their main lifting. So and that will help bring up hamstring strength. And then maybe we're going to talk about here at the bottom is how long does it take to see a difference. But as their hamstrings get stronger, all of a sudden they'll overcome that weight that had been previously their 1 rep max. So another common muscle in the squat is lower back. So a lot of times people, their lower back is a little bit weak, so their lower back won't help as much as it should. So doing exercises for lower back can help get their max up as well. So in the bench press, it's pretty much like chest and triceps. So a lot of tricep strength is required in bench pressing, especially for powerlifting, where they have their elbows tucked in, big arch, and kind of pressing up from there. So triceps are going to be a big component. You can also look at chest strength, like even like biceps and front delts, to help with the resistance or the lowering down of the weight. So there's a couple other muscles for sure that are going to be involved, but the main reason why somebody might be physically weak in a bench press is going to come down to triceps and chest. So, and then in deadlift, it's kind of the same thing as hamstrings and lower back, same thing as a squat. Those tend to be the common areas where people are weak. You will definitely have people who are weak in their quadriceps compared to their hamstrings. That does happen. So again, it's just kind of addressing the individual muscles of the lift, and you would usually do that in your workout after your main lift. So you might come in, do your warm-up, then all of a sudden you do your sets of squats, and then after that you'll then go address the individual muscles of a squat. So, and now kind of a good workout structure. So, and then our last thing, or third point here for like why you might be weak in a lift, is the mental components of the lift. So you're just not very confident. So maybe you're new to the lift, you're not very confident with it, so you tend to be inconsistent with your cues. You might be inconsistent with your speed of the lift. So maybe you're focusing really hard on your cues and you're moving really slow on the way down on a squat, and that doesn't give you enough power and kind of rebound and then come back up. So as somebody gets kind of mentally better with their cues, they get better at remembering things, they're going to all of a sudden get more speed to their lifts, and then the strength is going to come with that. So also, like you'll see very common is they'll get, because they are uncertain of their strength, they're kind of not mentally aggressive and kind of confident with themselves, is you'll see where they get loose in order to kind of create momentum. So that's what this scribble right there says. And what you'll see in that is like bench press, for example, like I mentioned, a person would lower down, then a couple inches above their chest, they just kind of drop it because they think then they're going to kind of power up through it. So that does not work. So at least not to as chaotic of a degree as they'll be doing it. So, and then especially in deadlifts, like I said, with people getting tight on the bar, you'll see as they grab the bar, all of a sudden they drop their butt and their hips really low and almost pull up through the bar, and then that creates a lot of that bad positioning, and that'll be the reason why they miss that lift. So again, kind of the three components we have of why somebody would miss a lift is going to be technique, which is the first place you should look and analyze your own performance. Then you want to address physical strengths, and the last is mental. So kind of getting the mental cues down, and once you are confident with your cues, then all of a sudden you'll develop more speed, and you'll get the strength part of that you might be missing from lack of speed or lack of consistency in your cues. So the last part we have here is how long does it take to fix this stuff? So, and like I said, you'll see sometimes with technique work is there's an immediate response. So within one training session of a client, we're able to kind of work up to a new PR, or at least maybe hit their current PR for a couple singles. So it shows them that they have gotten stronger. So there can be an immediate response whenever you work on technique. However, it's then going to take some practice to make sure that that's consistent and to kind of maximize whatever that technique is. So generally I tell clients to work on things and not expect a big significant change for 4 to 8 weeks. That does sound like kind of a long time, but in the world of lifting weights, 1 month is a very small amount of time. So, so especially like they'll get that immediate response that usually excites them, and then I tell them to just keep working on it, keep working on it, keep working on it, and then in about 4 to 8 weeks in that time frame, they can then attempt a new max or try to. They should then expect to see an increase. So if they're, for example, if they're doing it on Monday and they think they fixed something real quick, they're not going to all of a sudden have a brand new max 20 pounds heavier on Thursday. You know, so it does take some time to get that consistency down. So physical strength, you're definitely not going to see an immediate response. So we can't do something, if in one workout I do 3 sets of 20 on hamstring curls, I don't all of a sudden have super awesome hamstrings that now my squat's going to go up 20 pounds. So physical adaptations do take longer. So when you're looking for a nervous system response, you're looking for more muscle mass. So all that stuff takes time. So again, the time frame I usually tell clients to focus on is 4 to 8 weeks. So if they know they're weak in their triceps on the bench press, they're going to start to address their triceps, but they shouldn't really expect to retest their 1 rep max and see a huge difference for about 4 to 8 weeks. So again, it just kind of gets people out of that mindset of, okay, I know what I need to do on, like today, and then all of a sudden they think in 1 week they're all of a sudden magically stronger. So you will see people do that. They'll 1 rep max every single week thinking something's going to change. Nothing's going to change because there's not enough time for change. So the last thing we have is mental cues. So that's something, again, just like technique work, you might be able to see an immediate response. So whenever somebody helps you with your cueing, or when you kind of figure out how to get a little bit more aggressive, or like when somebody kind of points out the concept of being faster with your movement, you might get an immediate response. But to see a real full, kind of get the full amount of that response, or to get it to be extremely consistent, again, it's going to take 4 to 8 weeks. So I just said 4 to 8 weeks 3 times in a row, so hopefully that beats it in your brain. That it does take time for these changes. So a lot of people are impatient, but 4 to 8 weeks in the world of lifting, like I said, is really short. So I've been lifting for 16 years, so if I was able to make an improvement every 8 weeks, that would be amazing. So in the grand scheme of things, 4 to 8 weeks is a pretty quick time. So this is the general introduction video to addressing weaknesses in the main lifts. So in the next couple series of videos here, what we're going to see, there's more to come, specifics to come here. So, and we'll be addressing squat. So we're not going to, well, I might be mentioning some technique stuff, but a lot of that is really hard to help you with without being able to see kind of what your squat looks like. So I'll list a couple technique things, and then what we're going to be listing in the future videos is exercise variations to address known weaknesses, physical weaknesses. So if you kind of are working on the technique of your squat and you realize your lower back is weak, what we'll be talking about is what then should you do to address that lower back weakness. So, and we're going to talk about main lift variations. So if I want to squat to work on my quads, generally that's considered like front squats is a really good exercise for that, or high bar squatting. So then like if you want to work on your hamstrings, box squats is really good. If you want to work on kind of positioning in the bottom, maybe you feel like by the time you get to the bottom you're out of position, you can do pause squats or slowed eccentrics. So we're going to talk about what all that is in the next couple videos, specifically for squat, then a video for bench, then a video for deadlift. So if you watch this video and you have any questions, you're welcome to email us at brutalirongym@gmail.com. That's brutalirongym, all small letters, all one word, @gmail.com. Thank you.